Sure. Let's call the meeting to order here at 4:02 of our Policy and Governance Committee meeting. We do have to approve our March minutes for what it's worth, or unless we want to hold that and see if we have more than just the two of us, but can we
That's right. We've done it with two.
move in
before.
second, which I think we can move in second with.
Yeah, I move that we approve the minutes.
All right, and I will second it. And I think we're all in favor if we're only the two of us.
Yes.
All right, so we can move on to our 700 series. I think this is good. I'm glad that Les is on here because there's a lot of stuff in here that is going to be very much on the finance side. It's very wordy. So I went through real quick, mind you, went through the whole list, made some notes myself, more just questions, and they're very minor. So just to kind of bring everybody to the same spot, we'll just start 700 and start from there and see if anybody has any comments. And we will hopefully go through these quite a bit faster than we did the employee ones. So any random comments on the 700s or on 700 itself? As I try and make my computer work here. It's pretty basic.
I guess since I have to admit, Sean, since I just got called into this 20 minutes ago, I don't have anything in front of me. So does anybody able to share their screen to take a look at them real quick?
Les, you can, they're attached to if you go to board docs, they're in the agenda and you can open them up.
Oh, okay.
Sean, you mentioned any random comments on the 700, you meant 700 rather than the 700 series. I think the one thing I would say as we get started is that unlike kind of some of the ones in the 400s of personnel, a lot of these are things that are mandated or kind of really rooted to state law. And so I'm going to look to Les a lot for some of these, but as we look at it, we probably do need to be careful on some of the word changes because these are things that are probably dictated to us. And so just kind of that's my global comment. I'm not saying they're all like that, but I think that this section more than a lot, as they deal with finance and food service and facilities and construction, are going to be kind of in that what is legally mandated type vein a little bit.
Yep. I mean, there's a handful of spots where we got to fill in the blank areas for sure. And then there was just, like I said, I have a couple really minor notes that I more have questions about more than anything else. So I don't know if there's a whole lot we're going to want to edit here. But Les, as soon as you have them up and can breeze through it and start.
I'm down to the first, I've went through the first 5 pages, so I'm at 701.3. Is that kind of how you're taking them, guys?
Yep. So I'd start at the top, and if there's nothing on 700, we'd move to 701.1. I mean, like I said, the first one that I had a question on was 702. I don't know if anybody else has really gone through it that they'd want to jump in before 702. I'm sure Chase and Paul, you've read them verbatim.
Twice, actually. I've had some free time.
Yep.
Hey, actually, a lot of this stuff I have gone through being on this committee for as long as I have.
Oh, well, there you go.
Do you just want to start with your question, Sean, or Les, did you have other?
Yeah, I'm trying to scroll down to it if Les is about caught up to where I was going to ask the question. I'm at
701.3, the vendor W-9 procedures. I just point out that was a new one that we actually put in, I believe 3 years ago, to require those W-9s as a result of August of 2017, as a result of an IRS audit. It was one of their recommendations that we have, and it's just good practice. So we implemented that one and have been doing that very diligently. I might add, we've had vendors mad at us, to be honest, because they wouldn't supply a W-9 and we said, well, you don't want to be paid then. So, but that one's working well and being used daily pretty much. So,
All right. So the next one is kind of what we do with our documentation for all of our bids and things like that.
yeah, we're just moving all of that stuff electronically is really what it does. And that just puts us in a better position to share it and have it archived forever. So, and it'll allow us to keep it much easier way past any, record retention as well. Some of those things were only 5 years that you had to keep, and we can keep them much longer than that. And especially just to kind of bring you up to speed, any project that would be funded by the GO bonds, you'd want to have some of that for basically the life of the bonds if somebody came back and questioned those expenditures. Not likely, but it allows us to do that much easier.
Okay. It's a good background.
Yep. 702, I guess I'm down to that one. What's your question?
Okay,
there?
so scroll down one more page. Okay, so the only thing that stood out to me was the second line of the first paragraph, second there. Saying that, funds raised by students. Well, I guess it's the whole thing where it's basically for one day or that they're raising. And I'm just wondering if we need to have it say like a business day or something. I just know there's a lot of activities where money's raised on like a Friday and it's just sort of held over the weekend or something like that.
Yeah. Actually, I think that sentence, Sean, funds raised by students, those never get to the central office, to be honest, because we have cash handling procedures for all of the buildings. So that should say, I think, some to the effect of funds raised for any student activity should be promptly deposited in the student activity fund.
I mean, that works for me. I guess I just rereading it, I saw that it said central office. I was thinking it had said it was going to be kept in the school office for a day. And I wanted to make sure that there was some flexibility there, but I think promptly deposited into the account or into the fund is enough flexibility. And I think that probably works pretty well.
If this meant central office for the facility, so like the main office at Liberty, for example, as opposed to the music office, I think is probably what it's referring to when it says central office of the building. But in a district our size, I don't think that's the right reference.
Mm-hmm. So everybody cool with? Is everybody cool with just changing that to promptly deposited in the student activity fund? Does that sound reasonable for everyone?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Okay. We'll skip on down. I think the budget planning, this is basically just outlining our kind of whole calendar cycle that we kind of hold ourselves to, right?
It's got the April 15th deadline in there, which we all are pretty familiar with. So
yep. Talks about the public hearing has to be, or when the public hearing has to be, and the publication has to be within 10 to 20 days, which is correct. Filing with the county auditor by April 15th. And then an amendment by May 31st of each year. So yeah, that's all correct.
All right. We'll
and just for your humor on that, there's not to prolong the meeting, but there's really no penalty for late filing of the April 15th deadline because I asked that question in relation to the COVID-19. And the only thing that ends up is that the auditors can put a finding in your audit report that you were late, but you would have, in this year, you'd have a pretty sufficient reason if that was a challenge for you. So, there's IASB is working on, and maybe you guys have heard this communication, and this is a little bit off topic here, but they're working on potentially some things for the legislature when they come back in that would allow actions that a school district has taken that may not be 100% in accordance with policy, but were needed to meet the needs of the district or the students in addressing COVID-19, to kind of give a blanket exception for that. So just kind of keep your eyes open for that one. It applies to a whole lot more than just these business ones, but but there's some work being done. So if you hear something or needs anybody asks you for input, that's out there.
It's good to know. I think we should be able to file late when they don't give us what SSA is until late. All right, next one, the 7032 spending plan. That is very short and sweet. I don't see any real need to change that. Let's see. And then 7041, this looks very legal. So it was a lot of words. So go through that one too carefully, but it seems like something that we're just told to do.
The interesting one there is the proceeds from the sale of real property are placed in the PEPL fund.
Yep.
Get that question. We've gotten that question with the Roosevelt discussion, as you probably are aware of where those funds need to go.
And that was the, there was a bill last year or something, or earlier where they talked about changing that and it didn't go through or something like that.
Yeah, because I thought at one time, didn't we get some sort of guidance that, because it says the rest should go in the general fund, but I thought we got guidance at one point that it should go back to the fund from which the original purchase occurred.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, except that when that building was bought, the fund structure was different than it is now. So then you have to look at the fund that's as close to today's fund, that's as close to the fund that was used at the time as possible, or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
but now we're saying, right, that this trumps that even, Steve, that now that we're just going to make it clear that it goes to the PEPL whenever we sell real property. You're muted in case you were talking to me.
Yes, as my head was nodding for.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the series, so I couldn't see it none.
All right. So are we good with leaving it there? Or do we need to change that, or?
Yeah, I think we're fine.
Fine.
All right. Anything else on that page?
No.
All right, moving on, 7042, we got debt management. I only had the questions, just I want to make sure that the, the 5% that's listed there in debt limits and the 1.2 times,
That's statutory.
debt coverage. I just want to make sure that was something that was right. And if it's statutory, then I assume it's right then.
Yeah. I
Those
mean,
are the
I guess
questions I
right
have
under
there.
5% it says provide by the Iowa Constitution.
All right.
And not that you spend a lot of time looking at the audit report, but there's actually a schedule in the supporting information that shows that computation each year.
I don't know, I might read all these reports a little more closely. I got a lot more free time.
You'll be getting some good naps.
All right. Everybody good with that one? See, we're going to fly right through this without Ruthina, and we'll tell her it was her fault that 400s took so long. All right. So more debt management. This all seems pretty prescribed to me. Any comments on that whole 704?
Nope.
7042, I should say. All right. Oh. If I can get far enough down. I don't know what the whole disclosure policy,
Yeah, I'm looking at that. I'm not
pages
sure
of
either.
That one's relatively new. I think this is the one that's based upon some SEC guidance. Whenever you have debt outstanding, there's certain things that you have to disclose, or if certain things occur within your district that are considered material events, and required disclosure. And so you have to have this one when you have debt outstanding. So I'm pretty sure, Kim, this is the one that Beth Grove sent us and I forwarded it to you.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Got it from last month.
Les, what you're referring to is on page 6 of 8. So if you're following along in the document, page 23, Exhibit A, the listed events, I think that's exactly what you're referring to, of what the SEC says we have to
Yes,
do.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I've already reached out just, you know, for the committee's perspective, and administrators are on to Beth Grove to see what COVID-19, if any of that falls in. At this point, there's nothing that looks like it would fall into there unless we have significant declines in property tax revenues or sales tax revenue unrelated to the SAVE bonds that would get us in trouble. So that's just a heads up there that I'll be watching that and working with Beth and our financial advisors on that. But at this point in time, they aren't seeing that there's anything there that it's going to impact that unless things change. So. And you can see on the last page, page 24, there's a couple things that were added for the debt that we just sold in January for any debt on or after February 27th. So we were subject to 2 more items on that list.
Then we go to the second reference, the R2. Is that kind of in the same boat? I always wonder when, you know, it leads with something like the board treasurer shall, and then lists a whole bunch of stuff. So
Yeah.
if we're going to have policy that says they shall do that, I want to make sure that, you know, they actually are doing that.
Yes, I shall be doing that.
All right. I'm going
And
to
that
take
number
by
2,
the
there,
relatives.
that's the whole stack of documents you get when we sold the bonds. All of those various forms and certificates are a part of that document.
All right. I was just going to say, I assume from the relative silence from everyone else, you guys are all okay with everything?
Yeah. I mean, I just, you know, working with Les and knowing what Craig was doing prior, these are things that Craig would talk to us about what Les had to do in his role, and then some of the things that he would help with in his secretary role. So nothing is jumping out to me as irregular or different from our normal practices.
So then we move on to 7043, investments. I didn't find anything in this one. Anybody else on that one?
No, got to be pretty straight to the cuff on that stuff.
Yeah.
All right. And then 7044, gifts and grants. And this is stuff being granted to us. I guess I'm not sure.
I think where this one really comes into play would be if somebody left a big endowment to the school district and how it would be handled. The board should formally accept that, you know, or when we had land, I believe it was land back when Weber was built. I believe that land had a donation portion to that purchase of the land. So the board this says that the board needs to formally approve that. But if a parent makes a donation for $500 to a school that's outside of what the PTO is doing or something like that, we have not brought that to the board, but we do issue a letter in terms of the IRS rules that indicate that no goods or services were received. So we kind of take care of that one internally.
So where does that go? Does that go into like that building fund, or do you just kind of?
It would in that specific case, if that was the donor's request was to support a program in there. You know, where we get them the most is like a music donation. They want to,
right.
Back when City High was remodeling Opstead Auditorium, somebody wanted to donate the funds for a grand piano. You know, that's an example that I can give you where would be specific to a building and to a program, and you'd honor the donor's wishes in that situation.
Yeah. Okay, so we can move on. 7045. We're kind of getting into all the different types of places where we stick money. So the student activities fund, that seemed pretty straightforward to me. On 7046, I was kind of wondering, is this, would the foundation be governed under this part? Or is that completely separate?
Foundation would be completely separate. However, it's probably important that our policies are somewhat similar, because otherwise people would be thoroughly confused if one of us did it one way and did the other. I don't believe there's anything in here that causes me any great shakes from a policy perspective, and I don't think Susan would have anything either. I'm just not a big fan of crowdfunding, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add, Les, is despite what I said off the top, Sean, I think this is one of those where if we wanted to say all fundraising needs to happen through the foundation, and online fundraising campaigns such as, but not limited to, crowdfunding are prohibited, this is where we would want to do it.
Yeah, I guess my question is that specific then for the district itself doing that kind of thing, which I don't know if the district doing that, but I know like individual like PTOs would do that, or other affiliate groups would do that. So, but I don't know, are they covered by that or not covered by that?
No, we consider them. We did a big push a couple of years ago to get all of the PTOs and PTAs registered as 501c3s so that they're their own independent entities, like the foundation. So they technically wouldn't, I guess I shouldn't say, I mean, I should read it. They're not part of the district. So if this applies to the district, they wouldn't technically be covered by that, by this. So they would be free to do it.
Yeah, Ruthina has finally joined our meeting, so get you caught up. We are on
going because whoever's leading it, can you keep leading it, because I keep
you bet. I just wanted to let you know where we were at, so you can.
Yep, Paul told me.
Okay.
I mean,
Good job, Paul.
I haven't heard from. I mean, I asked Steve and Matt and Amy if they want to chime in, but I'm with Les. I think that opening up potential online crowdfunding type things to individual teachers without very strict and set parameters going through the foundation creates a lot of potential issues for us. And so if there are ways to limit that from a finance perspective, we would be in favor of that. I get there is some upside, but quite honestly, there's also an equity issue in it. And so, I think that speaks against allowing a lot of freedom for our teachers to do these type of things without going through the foundation. But Amy, Matt, Steve?
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think if we're doing them, we need to have them tied to the foundation in that way, because like you said, we could run into a whole host of issues with individuals doing that on their own and not having any affiliation with the district. And like you said, there's a whole equity component to that too, about where funds can be raised and where funds struggle to be raised. So I'm supportive of that as well.
And
I agree. And I think with having 27 or 28 attendance centers that could be out doing this, it just makes sense to have it all in one spot. At a nice little way that we look at them as requests come through. Kristen pushes them back to us. We're all on the same page. So I think that's important.
So then the question is, do we edit this page or do we just remove it? I mean, the whole thing leads with, the district thinks it's a great thing to do it.
So I would say, I guess my thought on that right now at this moment would be, we edit this, but maybe this is one of those that you set aside and you ask us to go maybe do a little collaboration with the foundation and bring back a revised 704.6 that has some input from the foundation before we sit here and try to revise it, and then take it to Susan to see if it's something that she can support and is good with.
And the challenge, I've had some brief discussions with Susan on this, and not to put words in her mouth, but some of these campaigns that would be done on here are trying to raise, you know, $300, $500. And that's not something that the foundation is all that interested in leading those campaigns, because it takes so much effort from their perspective, you know, in terms of their time and resources to manage something of that nature. And so she's probably going to say, I'd rather not do those fundraising activities and let it do the crowdfunding, but there's that whole balancing issue as to what's good and what's bad in crowdfunding. So
I think that's to Chase's point about what kind of language could we put around it, so that, you know, ones that are of appropriate size and scale, you know, could be attached, and then how do we deal with ones that are smaller? So I think we could probably work on some language of that, because like you said, Les, they're not going to be as interested in those small ones. So.
And we could probably incorporate that into that fundraising request that, as Amy was talking about, that Kristen gets and forwards around to everybody. We could probably make sure that this is shored up in there.
So are we're going to take that offline? Go,
Hey,
Paul.
Kim.
Yeah, or sorry, Paul, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Kim, do you have the binder with all the policies we've gone through already?
At work.
Okay. That's okay. I was just kind of going down because we've already done this, the 500 series, right?
Yep.
And so I was just wondering, I was going to find it here, but I just haven't had the time yet. The student fundraising, the 504.5, what we ended up saying in that one?
No, I don't think we've done 500. We've done.
No, I thought yeah.
No, we've done, 5 and 6 are our next ones. So.
Okay.
We've done 500 yet.
Yeah, that's what I was going to look at. It references that. It references 2 policies in the 500s for
Gotcha.
fundraising.
All right. So it sounds like we're going to work on editing that to find some language that works for both us and the foundation. Is that the plan?
Yep, that sounds good.
All right. We will move on. 705. 705.1, purchasing and bidding. I see there's dates and stuff in there. So just make sure those are accurate and whatnot. Some dollar amounts.
I need to look at that targeted small business procurement form and the dates related to that. I'm not sure that the Department of Ed is still collecting that information. I haven't seen a targeted small business report come from the Department of Ed in at least 10 years. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be using them, but I just think it's not something that they're collecting. So that one we might need to just double check on.
Okay, so there's some
highlights.
I guess down towards the bottom, there's some highlights there to fill in some numbers and stuff, but is that all together something we'd have to check on? I'm trying to,
I mean,
my screen's not nearly big enough.
We have those set limits that we operate under. I just don't have them off the top of my head. Les, do you know?
I believe that the second one for goods and services costing at least 10,000, we require or maybe that's the first one, it's 10,000. There's a 10,000 threshold, and then there's some of this that gets into the state mandated bidding processes with sealed bids and competitive bids. And I believe, I think that's out on our website, because Emily refers to that frequently and has come to me with questions about where our service falls or whether it's a contract and that type of thing. So I think we already have something out there that we can get those dollar amounts from. Unless the board's interested in setting some different limits.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Well, it's hard to know if I want to set a different limit if I don't know what they currently are.
And I think now we have a process, or we're supposed to, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, that any purchase over $100,000 we're supposed to present to the board, or we generally have an agreement or a contract that usually covers that, so the board gets it. But other than that, if you know, I'm thinking the textbook orders or technology orders usually get
Yeah. Yeah, we've got thresholds about that require specific reporting. So right now we're taking all contracts to the board, essentially regardless of size. But absolutely, there's a prohibition on gun exceeding certain caps.
Okay. If we've got somewhere we have the numbers of what the thresholds actually are. If somebody can get those to Kim so she can put them into the doc, I mean, I think that's all we really need there. I don't know that there's any need to necessarily change it at this point unless it's not working. But there kind of is the 3 levels, right? Where just do it level, and then the do it but kind of get a quote and bring it to the board, and then the full on competitive bid process is the top level. If we're already kind of following that, we just need to plug the numbers in. So somebody can find those and get them to Kim, then I think we'll be good to go. And with that, I would move on a little bit. I don't know that there's anything in the last page of that section, so I will move on. We have SONA 51G1, construction contracts. I think talks about competitive bids. I think this is what we're doing. We have a couple, or one reference to go along with that same 7051. I think we're all good on that section unless somebody else has something to add.
Yeah, I'm good with 705.
Did have,
we've been getting those amounts.
I did have one comment. Now I'm trying to find where it is because it was in 7051. Somewhere it talks about looking at a sample policy. This is like the language it's on page 34, so it's on 705 page 3 of 3. Down towards the bottom, talks about the award of all contracts is the first sentence. It's emergency repairs, and it says refer to sample policy 802.3. I think once we go through the 800s and figure out what 802.3 actually says, I think we want to change the language there so it doesn't say IASB sample policy, but it just says policy 802.3, right? Because that's what we will have.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was one minor little thing that I found. Okay. Now moving on to 705.2. That's a very short thing. Purchasing on behalf of employees. I have no frame of reference here, so I don't know if anybody has any comments on that. Or if it just looks good. All right, stunned silence. I like it.
It should just say the district will not purchase items on behalf of employees and stop there, if you want my opinion. Otherwise, we're a lending institution, or a purchasing agent for employees to purchase individually, and if the sale is to the school district, there's no sales tax collected, and that would be wrong in my opinion.
I think that it's pretty flexible writing. you know, the employee is paying for it and paying for any taxes and so I guess I don't know when it would come into play as a thing at all. I have no problem with saying that we wouldn't do it. Is there anybody else want
Les,
to
is
weigh
there
in?
anything, Sean, sorry to interrupt, is there anything, the only thing I'm trying to think of is there a connection with like employee technology purchase? Because I know that we've got some agreements that allow people to buy computers so that they can buy the same computer we have. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
That's would have been my experience in a previous district as well.
I had thought about it there. I guess the only other thing I can think of potentially here is, and I don't know if it kind of twists into this, is if if we ask an employee to participate in a professional development experience and they personally arrange for the travel and registration, if that intertwines with this at all, or if that's just a reimbursement of an expenditure that they have made personally. But it kind of twists into this in a little bit of way. But your technology one is a good example, Steve and Amy, where it may come into play.
I agree with Les's sentiment that we shouldn't be making these types of purchases, but I do like the way this is written because it says generally we won't do it, but if there is a unusual, unique circumstance, right? So it gives us that wiggle room. Always better to have a little bit of wiggle room than to speak in absolutes in some circumstances. So I agree, Les, with what you're saying, and that should be our stance, but I don't have a lot of heartburn given the way this is written.
Yeah.
It gives you a pretty good out.
Yeah, I think so.
I'd be inclined to just leave it as is with how.
I'm fine with that.
7053, it basically says you can buy stuff. That's how I'm reading it. The board's authorizing you to pay your bills.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything else there.
Okay.
So now we do get kind of into some HR stuff, which I would just look to you guys to just make sure that it looks right. I mean, 7061 is payroll periods. I don't know if.
So we're going to need to, we'll bring you back some adjusted language on this. I think it's not accurate because for a lot of our employees, the payroll period, we have two. Some of our employee people, the payroll period is a month. Others, it's actually every 2 weeks. So can we bring you something that's more accurately reflects our payroll periods?
Chase, I think if we just took out the first sentence, we would be okay.
Les, I like that. Simple is better. So if you think that works, you oversee payroll. So no need to make it more complicated than we have to.
Because we're on the 15th and the 31st, and that's what it says. And then negotiated agreements, which covers the physical plant, which is split between 2 times a month. And then we've got the paras and food service now that their agreements would say the same thing. So
if you take that first sentence out, then the second sentence that starts with employees are paid, does it need to say the employees are paid on the 15th of the month and or the last day, or how would that, does that need to be changed at all since you're doing one on the 15th and one's the 15th and the end of the month?
Yeah, Paul, we probably do need to make that one and or, I think, and then as determined by negotiated agreement, because in the negotiated agreements spell out if people are paid twice a month or if they're only paid once a month. So if you take out that first sentence and then add and / before the or, Les is right, that probably does get it done for us in a very simplistic way.
I like it.
Kim, you got that?
All right. We will move on because then we got payroll deductions. And again, it's up to you guys to tell me that it looks right, because it looks right to me from a layman's point of view.
And just to clarify, union dues, that can still be in there, or is that something that was taken out?
That needs to be taken out.
Yeah.
Oh, yep, that's right. Good call. So number 9 goes bye-bye. Any other changes you see?
What
It'd
about,
just be whether the charitable campaign deduction stays as 803.4,
Yep.
and the
Yeah,
associated PAC contribution needs to go away too.
and what about the savings bond one?
We don't currently have anybody that's done that, or nor have they done it for a number of years, but it's,
Technically, we could do it.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we're taking out 9 and 14 and putting a placeholder on 12 to make sure that that policy number is the right number. I don't know what on number 7, the public law 87-370, that number doesn't look like the number scheme I would recognize. I don't know what that is.
I think it should be more of just say annuity premiums, because it could be, or annuity contributions, because it could be a 403B or 457 plan.
So just say annuity contributions
Sure.
for 7. Works for me. Got another page of pay deductions as opposed to payroll deductions. So basically, if people are taking time without pay or something like that. This seems like something that's going to be mostly covered in a contract, would it not? A negotiated agreement.
Yeah.
Specifically starts with leaves of absence. So maybe it's all about leaves of absence. It's basically, so that second
Yeah.
paragraph kind of leads the whole thing.
Mhm.
So it's all talking about if they're gone for less than
A day.
a work day and didn't use any of their paid leave, then you can not pay them.
Right. But then that last paragraph, like we wouldn't place an employee on leave without pay for a period of time which is equal to the employee's absent from the employee's regular scheduled hours. We wouldn't do that.
I'm kind of wondering if a lot of all that stuff on leave and paid time off and unpaid leave and all of that stuff, it's in, like, we went through that in like 20 different places in the 400s. It seems kind of a weird place to have it here.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sean. And, there's no mention really, unless I don't see it here, about compliance with negotiated agreements, because some of this is outlined in our negotiated agreements as well.
I'm looking back at the 400s to see what it had in there.
I'm also confused a little bit about, it says when an employee is absent for work for less than 1 work day. Well, what about an employee who goes on maternity leave and is out of leave? Their employee pay will be reduced over the rest of their contract. They're not going to be placed on leave without pay. So maybe the other things is not, it just seems a little confining for that work less than 1 work day. So maybe it's covered in other places that I haven't seen that would be better off left there.
Well, I think to Sean's point, it seems a little bit narrow. There would be other reasons we might make pay deductions. And I know that's kind of, they get into that in the next one. So it's also weirdly placed, it looks like.
Trying to see, the next page is the 706.3 reference regulation or whatever, and that's not really any more helpful. It tells you if you screwed up on the previous page, then they could do something about it. Oh, what do we feel like we want to do with this one? It seems I don't know, redundant to me with all the stuff that's in the 400s, and I guess I'd be inclined to not have it in there, or if we left it in there saying something along the lines of, you know, what we've done in the past with refer to the negotiated agreements or something like that.
Yeah, I'd want to make sure that we really do compare it to everything that's in the 400s before we pull it out, just to make sure we have all our bases covered. On the other half of that, Sean, I agree that there needs to be a reference to what's outlined in negotiated agreements. The wordsmithing seems a little bit more difficult via Zoom than when we're all in the room together. I have to admit that piece.
Yeah.
In the 400, the two policies that it references in the 400, neither one, we don't reference the negotiated agreement unless we change.
Oh.
We may have changed it after that. What is it?
Unless Kim made changes and I don't have those. I'm just looking at from that meeting, looking at the policies.
Let me look really quick. $409.8 does not. 414.8. No, that doesn't reference the negotiated agreement either.
What kind of language is in there then? Is it more inclusive than this very limited section that we have?
Can be used to excuse involuntary absence not provided for in other leave absence policies.
So this would be another.
Superintendent has complete discretion to grant or deny a request on paid leave. Request for unpaid leave. No, it's not.
So I think what I see the difference is in the 400s, right? It's the employee initiating it, saying, I'd like to take unpaid leave. And this seems more like on the business side of things is you didn't work your full time, so I'm going to dock your pay, right? So maybe that's why it's in two different places. It still seems, I don't know. It might need some work, and I don't know that we're going to get through that.
Yeah, and you're right, because one of it makes it really simplistic, like that we all of a sudden know that somebody just doesn't come to work, right? And then we're gonna dock them. I mean, we have procedures where we track this through Time Clock Plus for our classified staff and a number of other factors. So I agree, Sean, it needs some work. So if we don't want to, we can, I love it when I make more work for myself. We can take this and try to bring back, or you guys love it when I say that too, when they're like, oh, just give it to the admin, they'll bring it back. We can try to look at it and see what we can come up with and then bring it back.
Are you still working with Brady on some of the other stuff in the 400s that we were
Yeah.
tossing around.
When I went, because we were doing the 400s over the winter, and then I went out on paternity leave, and so then COVID hit, and so Brady and I are still trying to wade through some of those things. It hasn't. We need to give it some more attention.
Okay, well, I guess maybe we just add this one onto that
Sure.
pile, the growing pile, perhaps. But
yeah, right.
Seems...
it goes up and goes back down.
Well, look at it this way: we're halfway through the 700s already.
I know. I did see that.
So, I think we will move on. I think from that to 7071. I mean, this is just us reviewing the bills every month. So looks pretty good to me. I don't know how I feel about it saying it's in written form. It's written electronically. Written is written. I'm okay with that one. 7072 is the treasurer's annual report. We love our annual reports, so I don't see a problem there. I'm going to go fast so I don't give anybody a chance to rethink anything.
I like it.
7073, we're publishing our financial reports.
Basically, Sean, you're just testing Les's reading speed.
He has all this stuff memorized. I don't think he needs to read it.
Yeah, that's just, we have to publish in the paper, and the paper gets to charge us royally for that.
Neat. That's a whole separate line item in the budget on how to pay for it.
It pretty much needs to be. It's pretty doggone expensive.
That's great.
Les, wasn't that talked about being changed, or did that just not happen?
There was one point, but I'm guessing the Newspaper Association balked at that one because that's a major source of revenue.
All right, so be it. We're publishing it, and we're paying for it. 7074, we do an audit. I'm trying to read if this is super prescriptive or if it allows us to kind of do whatever we're doing. It says we use an RFP for selecting an auditor. Is that accurate?
Yep, we do that every 3 years.
Do we need to explicitly state that in here? Does anybody think it needs to say it happens every 3 years versus annually or anything like that? It says that it's an annual audit review, and then as a separate line, we're going to use an RFP to pick that auditor. I guess technically it's all correct, but I don't know. Does anybody care?
Plus, doesn't it probably say when we do the request for proposals that it's a contract for 1 year that has 2 renewal cycles or something like that? Isn't that probably where we cover that?
Actually, I think we do it for a 3-year
Okay.
because it provides a great deal of efficiencies and understanding.
All right.
Otherwise, I mean, you could do the annual rollover, but I think we do a 3-year with provisions for rollovers for up to 3 more years, but we have been bidding it every 3 years.
Can we add a very open-ended statement that says, after we use an RFP for selecting an auditor, we can add a sentence that says this selection may last for multiple cycles or something very generic. Like if we use a may and not really put a number in there, that it gives us some ultimate flexibility.
Not to sound like I'm not following the board policy, but I think that would be a little bit cumbersome. From an operating perspective, it's best practice to do it every 3 to 5 years, and we've been doing it every 3 years. So as long as I'm around, that will continue to be the practice. But if you need to codify it, then your suggestion probably works, Sean.
Well, I just figure that way it allows you to do it every year if you wanted to, or it allows you to do it every 5 years if you wanted to. And if internally you're going to say that it's every 3, that's fine. But I guess I don't know if anybody feels that it needs to explicitly state it there one way or the other. I think the way it reads, and this is just my opinion, that it says we're selecting an auditor to do an annual audit, that implies that selection happens annually. It doesn't specifically say that, but it implies it, in my opinion, the way it's written.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at the state code real quick to see if it gives us any cover or guidance at 11.6 that they cite, but in all honesty, it's like 4 pages long of single, you know how the code is written, so I'm scanning it very quickly.
What do you think, Paul? You don't care, do you?
I'm hopefully only around as long as Les is, so it sounds like we're doing what he's doing.
I mean, I think, Sean, in all honesty, so I think that this is one of those where you're asking us our comfort level, but it's really how comfortable is the board with it. I mean, I think that we know we wouldn't want it to tie our hands to anything less than 3 years, but we feel like based on our practices, we're okay, but it wouldn't hinder our ability to operate if we added a line. So it's really not to try to punt on it, but it's something that I don't think is necessarily going to impact our day-to-day.
Well, that's why I think if we add this statement of this selection may last for multiple years, then I think it effectively unties your hands.
Right, sure.
In my opinion.
Okay.
How about if you want to do that, Sean, how about if in the at the end of the second sentence where it says the superintendent will use a request for proposal procedure in selecting an auditor, add at least once every 5 years. And that way our 3-year practice easily complies with that.
I'm okay with that.
I'm good.
That sounds good to me as well.
All right. Nailed it. See, we can wordsmith via Zoom. All right. You get that, Kim? All right. We will move on. Internal controls. That sounds very wordy. I can honestly say I did not read this one verbatim because it looked very wordy. Does anybody have any thoughts on that one? If you scramble to commit it to memory here.
It's what I live my life by. At least make a valiant attempt.
I mean, I'm just thinking back to, when we have audits and things like that, they talk about our internal controls and how good they are. And so I think if this really matches what we're doing, then I think we're all good because what we're doing seems to be working very well. So if nobody has any huge problems with it, we will move right along. So then it's basically our appendix 9, right? Is that kind of what this next chunk is, so to speak? I guess I was wondering about this, the 7075G1, where it talks about specifically the 10-year facilities master plan. I know I'm trying to remember what the G's are. It's just sort of a
G's are guidance, right? Those are the ones
Yeah.
that we've added on our own.
Yeah. So I don't know if that needs, it talks about updating the plan. I'm trying to.
So I didn't have Dwayne join us tonight just because I knew that this first 50 pages was all finance. Is this something you want me to get his input on?
I mean, he can look at it, but I've read through it and it's pretty, I mean, it's what we do already. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it is the basically the appendix 9 steps, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of go through there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with Paul that nothing steps out of me of being out of line.
My question to the board members would be is that we have a 10-year facility master plan, which will be completed in about 2 years. So it's about 2 years ahead of schedule. Will this policy be reviewed again before that, and such that if there's a facilities master plan 2.0, will that fit within this or be outside of that, or you're just trying to make this document that serves us long term?
Well, the first sentence under number 1, the facilities master plan, it just says that we're going to receive and approve and may approve a 10-year plan, which will be updated annually. But at some point, you're either going to have to start a new one or the one we have is going to run out. But I think we've done that. I mean, it's pretty much updated as we've approved stuff. And I think when we accelerated it, that kind of upped the timeline.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'd agree with that. I mean, once we work out the next however many years, I mean, we could change that tiny little bit in here if we really wanted to. So it's, if we create our FMP 2.0 as a 5-year plan, we could edit that. But I think the bulk of this, like all the steps are still going to be followed for every one of the projects and everything. So I don't know that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that you could probably, if you really wanted to change something in here, so it would be, you could take out the word 10-year facility master plan and just say directors will receive and may approve a facilities master plan, because they may not all be 10 years that we do, right? It may just be the next one, maybe 3 years.
That seems reasonable. Just take out the date or the time range on it altogether.
Yeah,
we're constantly.
That's Kim is under the first sentence under number 1.
Or just call it a multi-year facility master plan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you, like I said, if you just take the year part out of it, though, you're not. We're doing like 5 projects that are going to take 1 year to do.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yep.
I think it lends itself, though, Paul, to the point is that it's good business practice to have a long-term facility plan, and I think that's a little bit of where this is going. And so, to your point, yes, we could have a annual 1-year facility master plan, but I think, it'd probably be a good policy to be thinking that it needs to be multi-year.
Yeah. And I'm okay with that change as well. I mean, then just take the time of 10 out.
Yeah.
And we'll,
I'm good with a multi-year plan. I think that's kind of covers all our bases. I don't know that we'd ever actually in practice create a 1-year plan. Good with that. We've got 7075 R1. Back to kind of internal control procedures. I assume this is specific to things we are doing here.
Oh, shoot,
any thoughts on that one?
I just asked if there is a way that it could be incorporated into the previous one under internal control, but there's nothing there that's causes me heartburn from having it there. It just seems a little disconnected, I guess.
Yeah, that's where the G's and R's come in. So
yeah, you have kind of the general policy, and then you have specific stuff to what we do, and yeah, it does kind of make for some weird orders. In this particular case, it probably makes sense to just flip the order of the R and the G, but huge shakes. But if the language is good, we can move on. The next one has a whole lot of fill in the blanks on it, the 7076 Audit Committee. Which I'm not sure what, I mean, is this what two of the board members do every month as we're going through the bills? Is that the Audit Committee, or is this a end of the year, bigger picture kind of thing?
Well, in conversations I've had with other business officials across the state, this varies anywhere from it being called an audit committee, where it really is a function of just helping select the auditor when you do that RFP, and then, you know, maybe actually meeting with the auditor, would have a preliminary review of the audit report before it goes to the board, and that's the extent of theirs, to a finance committee, which meets on a monthly basis. And I know you're thrilled that I might even recommend such a committee. And I'm not saying that I do, but that's another option, is that they could serve in some of these roles and review the audit and serve, or you could handle it as the audit committee will, you know, serve to review the boards and be a rotating committee, or excuse me, the bills, and be a rotating committee as you do now. So I think this is up to the board as to how they want us to structure this. This is the most formal approach here in actually having what's called an audit committee.
Well, you know me, and super formal.
But if you notice at the bottom, if it's a formal committee designated by the board, you got to post the agenda and take minutes and that kind of stuff. So.
Well, I was being totally sarcastic because I'm not a formal person.
I knew that.
I don't know what to do with this, quite honestly. I am curious. Right in the middle, it talks about recommending an auditor to the board, and it talks about inserting a frequency there, and that's what we were just talking about, you know, earlier. The frequency of picking an auditor. Do we have a committee now of that you would say is an audit committee of non-board members that does this work, or is it kind of just you, Les?
It's primarily me, and you know, some of the, like the selection of the auditor, I would coordinate the RFP process, but I would work through, you know, Steve, Matt, Amy, and Chase as to the final recommendation that would then ultimately go to the board for approval. So, you know, it may be processed up through one person, but it would be handled by a group. And you know, in terms of selecting an auditor, to have a committee to do that if you're only doing it every 3 years, you know, seems like you're having a committee just to say you have a committee. You know, and then the meeting with the auditor and the annual audit is you know, a once a year, October, November type thing. And so it's, again, as I said earlier, it's up to the board as to the formalness of this committee and what it looks like.
The other thing I guess I would offer on that, Sean and Rethina and Paul, is that you know, it's an audit committee, and you look at the functions they're supposed to serve. And I know there are organizations that have this type of audit function or internal audit, but Les, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've never gotten a recommendation from our auditor that we need to formalize some sort of internal audit committee, correct?
That is correct.
And so, I mean, I think that, you know, to your point, or to the, Sean, your point about, you know, it's something we need to do, the state's throwing everything in here that we could possibly ever need to consider, as we know. But what we do know from audits that have been done since Les got here, we've never had that recommendation from our outside auditor that we've selected through the right process that we need this. So if this isn't something that the board feels strongly about, I don't think that we're in a position, given how our audits have come back, that we would need to do this. But as Les said, we'll follow your lead on it if we feel like we do need to explore it further.
So Les, just looking at the bullet point ones, those are all things that you do, right? Like you currently do?
Recommend the auditor to the board. Yeah, that's what I was just, talking about, that RFP process, oversee the selection. Those are in the audit findings. Yes. And all of those are reported, to you in the audit report. A liaison between the board and the auditor during the audit process. The auditors have a requirement that they have to have a personal contact with the board president at the completion of the audit before they can issue the report. And I think, this last year, they actually, had two phone calls with Janet, if I'm not mistaken. One was, done kind of early in the process, and one right before the release of the audit, just to make sure that nothing had happened in that month period. And the audit committee report to the board about the audit, we actually have the auditor come and do that. So you're getting it straight from the horse's mouth and not an interpretation from, a board member who may or may not be well versed in what an audit report looks like. I don't say that in a bad thing about any of the people on our board, but most of you don't work in that world. And so presenting that report to the board is probably a little awkward in some cases. And so, again, as Chase reiterated, it's the board discretion here as to how you want to handle this one, whether you pull it or whether you formalize it.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if we could leave it in there, but change some of that so that it's worded so that, we add in whatever your title is as doing some of these things. And then also adding Chase's role as the COO, because I would assume that, some of those recommendations and changes are coming from you guys to the board. So like we're trusting that you guys are doing it, and then that's who's basically you're kind of the audit committee
Yeah.
in itself, and then we have it in there, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Sure.
And I guess if you want, the three people that I would suggest that be included in here, maybe fourth, it would be the superintendent, the COO, the treasurer, and the board secretary.
Yeah, and I would be comfortable with that part going forward. And Sean, maybe if at some point the board decided that those people aren't doing their job like they're supposed to be doing, then that's when we would really have to step in and say, all right, we're taking this over, or become a part of it.
At some other point, you just add people to the committee, right? To help facilitate. I think when you read it, it's very much trying to make it very open and public to ensure nobody's doing anything underhanded, because it talks about using, public members and having a mix of internal and external members. So I think that's a can of worms that I don't really want to open. So I like the suggestion of just saying, here are the folks internally that do these duties that are listed there, because we are doing them, and calling that good for now.
Yeah, and if it needs to be changed from audit committee to whatever it is, you lose that committee part of it. I'm okay with that as well. Like I said, if we have the who's doing it, and the same type of thing where the responsibilities are, and that those 4 team members are doing it, then that's kind of our team. So
if you're going to go that route, Paul, I might suggest that you back up and put that in a few pages back when we talked about the audit, and have it designated there, and have that this information should be provided to the board by this group of people. As you leave it here with a committee that's in the policy, I believe you're setting it up to be subject to the open meetings law. And so every time we would meet, the group of people would meet to talk about this, we'd have to have an agenda if we're considered a audit committee as designated by the board.
And I'm okay with that route as well, just as long as it's somewhere. I mean, we've done that in other policies here where we completely not used the policy or added it to somewhere else. So I mean, if that's the route to go, and we just need to make sure we're covered, because like the legal references that are in here, Chase, like I don't know what those are necessarily referencing, so I don't know if it's something that has to be on there or not.
And I started to open back up that document and I looked at it. It does say ad hoc committees at the bottom, and then that you're talking about the legal references at the very, very bottom, right, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, that chapter 11. We can look that over again. But I mean, we haven't had one, and we've not gotten anything from anybody at the state level saying, hey, you have to have this. And so I think that your suggestions about that should be okay, right? Because if this was something that had to be more of a public group, I think we would have gotten that guidance at some point. I don't know if that's in the same ballpark what you're saying.
No, and I'm okay with not having it. If we're already doing all these things at the administration level, I'm okay with not having it, as long as those references that are mentioned in here aren't saying that we have to have this committee, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if we don't have to have it, I don't think we should. I like Les's suggestion. Maybe we, on the audit section, which is really just like one sentence, we can say something like, to facilitate this audit process, these things will happen, and we add that bulleted list of things that we're doing to that page, and then striking this whole section.
Agreed.
Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah. Les?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not going to go back on my recommendation.
I changed my mind on myself. All right. I don't know. Let's see how far we are and how late folks want to be doing this. I know when Ruthina's doing this, she holds us to a pretty good timeline and wants to end fairly early. So I don't know, how late do you guys want to keep going?
Just for record, we're on 7:08 and there's 4 to go. It ends on 7:12.
So should we try and power through the 700s? Is everybody okay with that? We're going pretty quick. Nobody said no. All right, too late. All right, we're on 7:08. This is our records retention policy. I know I have a super awesome one at work, so looks like a lot of the stuff is electronic, so we're kind of keeping that permanently. I don't know if there's anything in here that is inaccurate. I assume this was put together based on what we are doing, but maybe it was just dictated.
I'm confused as underneath the table, the second paragraph that starts, employees' records are housed in the central administration office of the school district. And then this next sentence says, the employees' records are maintained by the superintendent, the building administrator, the employee's immediate supervisor, and the board secretary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, does that mean that there's an employee record at the central office for John Bacon and there's one at City High for John Bacon?
No, that's not how I read it. I think they're reading it, I haven't read the rest of it, but I read maintained as those are the folks that are supposed to be making sure the right documents are in the record, is how I would read maintained. But you bring up a good point. Those people don't maintain those records, as we've done with some other things. Employee records are maintained by human resources.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with just striking that laundry list of people and put human resources, or striking the sentence altogether. But
I mean, I think it's good to have in there so that people know, they should know where to go with them. But yeah, employee records are housed in central administration office of the school district. The employee records are maintained by human resources. I think that complies with our policy. A principal can't just come to district office and say, you know, I want to see so-and-so's employment file. They've got to come through HR, and we go through, you know, why do you need access, things like that. And so putting that out there would be transparent about the process we use.
So we'll change that to HR. Is there anything on the actual chart itself with the different timelines? Is that, or the years?
I don't think so.
Go ahead, Les.
I don't think so from my perspective. I don't see anything that causes me anything there. I'm wondering is if there's if you want to have some wording that the records may be kept in an electronic format.
It's
Does it say that someplace?
there. Yeah. It's the last paragraph on page 2.
Oh, okay. I hadn't scrolled all the way down.
Les, my only question was on the school meals programs. Is that right? We keep those for 3 years after we get reimbursement. Do you know?
That's what I've told Allison.
Okay.
In fact, we may have told her 5. I don't know for sure, but at least I know it's at least 3. So.
Okay.
That works for me.
Yep.
So on page 2, I mean, I like very simple special education one in accordance with law. So we'll just do whatever the law says. I like that. So we all good with 708 then?
At the bottom of the first page where it says permanent records of students who are graduated, these records will be maintained by the high school principal. And it goes back to Chase's point about being maintained and where they're housed. But is that correct? Is that the responsibility that we've designated to our high school principals for that, or want to?
Oh, Matt and Amy, I don't know the answer to that one.
I do think that is what we have going on right now, Les.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I just wanted to make sure if practice was following policy there, or if it can.
There is an extra period at the end of that paragraph, though.
Ooh, good catch.
Does that make
I saw it. I was going to let it go, but no.
Well, I was like, Sean's going to say it if I don't say it, so I'm going to get in there.
I was trying to let it go. I have another note where there's missing a space somewhere.
Steve can attest in a previous rendition of this committee that would have been pointed out and discussed for minutes upon hours.
Well, we're not that group, so I'm moving on to 709.
Actually, it was the entire content of most of the meetings.
All right. So 709, insurance program. It looks generic enough that I think we're probably okay. Basically says we're going to have some insurance on property.
Yeah.
Do you have any issues with that, guys?
Steve, what's your thoughts in the last sentence where the superintendent's on the capital asset management system? Does that just leave it or change it to some other department or area?
Well, from a consistency basis as a policy thing, if you're going to change it to something else, what would you put in there?
I think we've been using superintendent or designee. Isn't that
Yeah,
right, Ken?
that's, I was going to say, if you want to add designee, I think that'd be fine. But other than that, I think from a consistency basis,
Okay.
just over time, yeah.
So we've changed virtually every other spot in these policies that said superintendent. So trying to, because I think just saying designee leaves it as wide open as it can be. All right. We're on to school nutrition program.
On it, just this is kind of a, not to prolong the meeting for sure, but do you want anything in the insurance that specifically states cyber or electronic records? Or do you feel that there's enough there that says risks of loss, damage, and as well as legal liability? It's just a question. It's not.
I think it's pretty broad, but
Yeah,
it will be covered.
Okay.
I would agree. All right. So 710, the school nutrition program. I didn't I don't think the first one question I have is not until you get down to 710.4. And then I think it goes on a little bit after that, and it's specifically the what we do with like negative balances and things like that. Because I know that's a very public thing out there of what different school districts are doing for their kids that have negative balances and stuff like that. So that'd be the only area I'd worry about doing or talking about it. Everything else looks fine on the first point 1, 2, and 3 to me.
These are pretty dense, so sorry, it's taking me a little bit of time.
Oh, that's all right. Keep scrolling back between the video and the policy, so I never know if people are talking or not.
I like that employees are required to pay for meals consumed. Apparently they can order them, but not pay for them.
It's free if you throw it right in the trash.
We actually used to have a pretty broad program that allowed a number of employees to eat for free every day, but that's kind of gone away. Which one were you saying you had a question on, Sean?
It's when you get to the meal charges and it talks about negative balances.
Oh,
there it is. Okay.
I mean, it briefly talks about it earlier on, was it point 2, where it talks about if a student owes for 5 or more meals, it talks about contacting the parents and things like that. But I think in the end, where all the highlighted stuff is on 710.4, I think that's where we need to make sure we land on something, right? Whatever policy we're currently doing, or if we want to.
710.4 G1 is what the current administrative guideline is.
So you're saying I got to scroll down. All right.
So I'm wondering if that could just be what the meal charge policy should be, because I think it addresses all the things in that 710.4 notes.
Okay.
I like Kim's thinking on that.
Yep.
I agree after reading through that.
On 710.3, is the wellness policy still at 507.9?
I'll make sure.
And does the wellness policy address when vending machines can be on? Or is that too much detail here that?
That's probably too much for the policy, Les.
Okay.
So yeah, if we can blend our guidance doc with the policy, I'm okay with that.
And yeah, the wellness policy is 507.9.
So maybe the first paragraph from 710.4 add to 710.4 G1.
Sure. Try to make sure there's not other stuff there. I guess the little bit that's on 710.4, the page 2 of 2 is communication of the policy. I don't know if that's necessarily in the
No, it might not be you.
G1, but that should be added if not. But everything in between those, that first paragraph and that last paragraph, it looks like it's covered there. I know it, it specifically calls out myschoolbucks.com as the online payment plan. I'm wondering if it should just be more generic that you can do online payment, because I know in my time here we've changed what company it is that does that.
I think could that just be something that can be updated though? Like at least in policy that tells you exactly, it is our policy. This is where you're paying at, just laid out there.
Let's say yes. Oops, what did I do? Okay. So we good with moving on, or is there any more we need to hash out there on the 704?
The most detailed policy I've seen tonight.
Spent a lot of work on this myself.
We'll make sure to invite you back for the 400s and 500s.
Yeah.
Decline.
All right, so if we're good, we'll move on to 711.1, our transportation eligibility. I think this is pretty much prescripted from state requirements. If I'm not wrong. The very last paragraph on the 711.1 talks about transportation agreements with neighboring school districts. I don't know where that comes into play.
Does that happen at all with Kirkwood Learning Center at all? Do we do that at all?
I can't remember what we set up on that.
What? Ask that question again, please.
Well, I'm just trying to remember, and I may be totally off, but if I recall, like Kirkwood Regional Center, is there any time where like a student from say West Branch would drive to City High and then they would get on the bus that goes to the regional center, that type of thing?
No, they do their own transportation, Paul. That's just, that loop is just for our students. And so the other partnering districts are responsible for their own transportation there. They don't use our stops.
Okay. How about,
This makes me think of the usually helps with any agreements that happen between districts. And I'm not aware of any that we're working with the AEA on that specifically.
I think this kind of applies to the old thing when you had the primarily rural school districts and you had buses going in and out of school districts, as well as maybe where you have sharing agreements between districts, prior to merger and that type of thing. So probably it's not applicable to Iowa City, but it's okay to leave there.
Okay. Yeah, and as being IASB policies, of course, they cover more districts like what you are referring to.
Doesn't look like it hurts anything, so we'll just leave it in there. The next one, 711.2, is the student conduct on our transportation. Talks about using video cameras on the buses. It's about warnings for bad conduct. I just want to make sure, it actually puts a number there. Is this...
I was going to ask Amy that.
Accurate?
Amy, is that what we're using at the elementary, that we give them four warnings for conduct?
I was thinking it's 3, and it's probably posted online if I go peek at it fast in the handbook.
Right, in those discipline protocols, procedures.
Yeah. We can update that number, Sean, if we need to.
So other than the number, I'm okay with the rest of it. It seems like we would be adhering to that. Anybody else have any concerns about 711.2? I guess we do have a reference right after that, basically saying what the conduct is. So I assume that's in our handbook somewhere.
It says recording devices may be in operation. Should that say shall be, or is that too prescriptive?
Well, do we require it of our bus company to have recording devices on the buses?
We have them on the buses. I would hate for us to say that they shall be, and then if something goes down, we can't run the buses because we don't have video cameras on them. I'd have to get out the transportation contract and look at it in terms of what specifically it says. I mean, I believe it's a requirement that they have cameras on the buses, but whether or not it gets as prescriptive of, you would think that it would, right? What else would we have them on there that they're supposed to run? But I don't know. I'll have to look back at the transportation contract specifically.
How about, and I don't know if this counts as a bus or not, but what about like when you take a golf team to a meet and you're using district, like a Tahoe type thing? And I mean, that's extracurricular activity, or is it just, that I don't think those have cameras on them if I'm not mistaken, or do they?
Not all of them. Some of the vehicles, like our homeless transportation vans, do, but not all of our Tahoes and things. They have some sort of tracking, so we know where they are, but they don't all have cameras on them. And you're right, this does say school district vehicles, so May is probably better. Given where we are, and that's not, I shouldn't say it, given our current fleet, that May is more fitting. Is it better? I think is a different conversation.
Sure.
I just peeked on our transportation handbook that's online out on the front facing part of the website. It does take you through the disciplinary steps. And when you get to level 4, it does talk about bus suspension there. So that's accurate.
All right. Love it when a plan comes together. So then we do have a whole section here on recording devices on buses.
Yep.
Basically what to do with the recordings.
Yeah, and that's something you guys, I would assume, have, that you can just, whatever option we're using.
Yes, about how.
Yeah, we can just fill it in.
Yeah, we can fill that in.
I would ask the first page of that reference at the bottom, it has the district annually providing that notice to students and parents. I know we've had previous codes where we're looking at annually providing notice, and it's like a statement on, we do e-registration or something like that, or I don't know. Is that statement being provided annually to students and parents? That's under the notice. And do all the buses have a notice that says that it's equipped with a recording device?
You're asking if they all have one, Sean?
Well, I mean, we under the notice, right, it says that all the buses are going to have these signs up, and we are going to send out this memo to students and parents annually. And I just want to make sure that if we're putting that in a policy, that yes, we are notifying people, and yes, they have that notice in the buses. Otherwise,
well, it seems like the appropriate thing to have. So if we're not, then we need to do it, I would say.
Right.
So, yeah.
Alright.
I'll talk to Esme about whether or not the buses are equipped with that sign, and if they're not, we can make sure that they're there, and then.
It does mention it in that handbook I keep referencing.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm just looking for consistency, so it sounds like we are, so. All right, moving on. Okay, so then this is where the options you were talking about, filling it in with the appropriate one on R2, right?
Yeah.
Do you need anything else for that from us?
No, I have questions on the next one, and this will probably be for Matt.
Let's do it.
I'm mainly thinking of secondary sports, but it's talking about extracurricular activities and riding on the bus, and then when you don't have to ride home on the bus if you were transported by the bus. So it's just language in there like the one that's approved by superintendent. I would be okay with adding that designee, but then the next paragraph. This starts out by saying students who are provided transportation in school district transportation vehicles for extracurricular events will ride both to and from the event in the school vehicle unless arrangements have been made where the building principal prior to the event. And just an experience, some of the athletic ones, if the coach approves it and you're signed out or however they do it, I mean, that's obviously not going through the principal. So, is that something that we want to reword? And I don't have kids that are necessarily in the arts, but I don't know how that side of things works either.
Yeah, we've had the same thing with music events. They either tell you have to ride the bus, or the music director says, hey, if you have pre-authorization, you can get a different ride home or whatnot. So similar.
So that's just, I guess I'm questioning the wording, like if we needed to change it to.
Do you think it's covered in that second sentence, Paul?
I was going to say, I think that second sentence
Parent
gets it.
may personally appear to
Yeah.
request to transport the student home, because I think that's what you're talking about. Like after a game, the parent signs out the student and then they go. I think this one's talking more like, we're going to be in Des Moines for this competition. My parent's going to transport me to the competition and we'll meet you there. I think those are the ones approved by the principal ahead of time. And then the second sentence covers the scenario you're talking about. But if you don't think that covers it enough, we could.
No, I just want to make sure it's not like principal is the only, how we've changed superintendent to superintendent or designee. Like, does this need to say principal or designee?
I mean, we could still say principal or designee because it might not just be the principal, right? It might be a sponsor that's approving those ahead of time, or an assistant principal or something too. So I don't think adding in the org designee would be problematic there. It'd probably just cover us more. So.
Okay.
I had like 10 minutes left before my battery died, so I had to go plug it in.
I think we only have 10 minutes of work left.
Yep, sure looks like it. Are we ready to move on to 11.4?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what we do for summer school transportation. Or what summer school we have?
Well, also summer extracurricular could still lead to sports and dance camps or cheer camps or whatever. I mean, there's still stuff going on in the summer.
And the way this is written, it doesn't tie us into anything. There's a lot of mays, and that we have to provide recommendations annually. So I don't think that there's anything that says that we have to do anything here or prohibits us from changing any practice at any time, as long as we're just making that, as long as we're doing it on an annual basis, I guess. So we can't do it anytime. We just have to make sure that we're clear with the board about what we're doing.
Yeah.
All right. So does it look good as it stands?
Yep.
All right. 7.11.5. Non-resident and non-public school students. Very wordy.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know when you've all got it memorized.
Well, I mean, like, do we do this, or do we don't have non-resident students paying tuition, right?
Well, I'm not 100% sure. We might have some tuitioned in kids. It doesn't happen very often because the tuition's almost, I think if I got my number right, $2,000 a trimester, $6,000 for the year. So discourages folks
But are they-
to do that.
Are
But
special ed kids included in that?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. We'd probably have somebody that's tuitioned in.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
Yeah, we get tuitioned in and tuitioned out on special ed.
gotcha.
You might have an I-9 student in there that would be paying tuition.
Yeah, we're starting to get rid of those just because we got rid of our, I can't remember what that designation is called, Kim. I'm repressing it. Whatever that designation is, we got rid of that.
Sevis.
CVIS. Yeah.
Terrible
Bad
word.
memories. I repressed that.
I didn't.
So is there any changes needed then? Take that as a no. All right. So
yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
don't
move
think
on to-
anything.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. We'll move on to 711.6. Not sure. I'm not sure what this means. It might be different because it's not like our owned buses that we're loaning out to other people. That's kind of how I read this. But
That is, and that's kind of what we've said, Sean, is that, we aren't going to green light people. Although,
If you go down, the next one's as a G, which is basically our
yeah,
policy on it.
because we do have some agreements to the BASAPs, I know, that to use the buses, I think. So this is our current one, the 0.6G.
Yeah, that's what Gs are, right, Kim? They're our policies.
So the regular policy, I mean, it specifically talks about using it for local nonprofit entities, which is very,
That kind of tracks with what we consider like our mission partners. I mean, Matt, when you say that, I mean, in a general sense, that's, and Steve, isn't that pretty reflective of what we?
You could almost take.
I think it may.
You could almost take out the 711.6 policy as a whole and just use our guidelines, because the first part of our guidelines are any use of school district vehicles by non-school groups shall be subject to the following
Guidelines.
yep. I
So
like
if we just
that.
I'm
took
fine
that
with, I'm fine with that.
and just used ours.
Certainly easier. And then there's a form to fill out to do it, it looks like.
Yep.
Yep.
So that sounds good. 711.7 safety instruction. We have like the flight attendant showing you how to use the safety belts and stuff on our buses. Do we have safety drills?
We do
Twice
have
a
safety
year?
drills.
Yeah, we do
Is
eBay.
if we keep that, do we keep the record or does, will Iowa Central be keeping that record was my question.
And I can check with Esme, but my guess is they keep a record of that. They probably are required to by state law. Maybe
Good to
federal
know,
law.
so we can make sure that
Sure.
line that says it's maintained by the district or however it's going to happen is accurate.
Okay.
Anything else in 0.7? Nope. All right, we're rolling. So 0.8 basically says we're not going to drive if we can't drive safely.
Yeah, and just some adding or designees in there to the superintendent lines.
I don't know, I get calls all the time from Superintendent Steve Murley telling me about my weather delays and whatnot.
Not anymore.
Careful, next week.
That's like there's
I
chances of
was gonna
snow
say
coming
it's gonna
up. So
snow.
Adam showed us a model today of 12 inches of snow.
Yeah, come on, man.
I hope it's not true.
We're going to cancel virtual school for inclement weather.
wow. All right, we good with that part?
Yeah, we are. Sorry.
All
yes.
kidding aside,
Yeah.
yes. All right. This is an interesting one. The 0.9 district vehicle idling talks about don't waste fuel and make pollutants. Is this something like this part of our environmental policy that we've put together?
That's what I was thinking.
This
That's what I was
specifically?
thinking, Sean, is we don't have anything like that, but we can definitely look at this as part of our plan that we're going to bring to you all.
It seems like a better place for that than having a whole policy on vehicle idling.
I would agree.
So we're pulling that one. Is that the agreement?
That's what I would recommend.
I think so.
Kim, you got that? Okay. We're almost done.
Yep. Well, do we have seatbelts? State law it says so.
Right.
I know it was like new vehicles built or however the law was written, so I don't even know what our.
So, right, I think this is part of that new law that came out last year that we had to develop a policy. And so this policy, it notes, should work for that. And we have to, any new buses that we buy would have to have these 3-point lap shoulder belts on them. But it doesn't necessarily apply to our district right now for the most of our buses, but we still have to have this policy in place. So it's a long way of. Go
Do we
ahead.
need to add a line at all that says like any of our buses purchased from whatever date on will adhere to this, and any ones that are before that won't?
I was going to say something similar to that, but do it the other way. Say buses in operation prior to whatever date the law would affect are grandfathered in, or something like that.
I think Iowa code defines it as that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think we have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the fact that it says as required by state law at the end of that first sentence probably provides us the protection we need.
Does everybody feel good about that then?
I do.
I see head nods. I will accept it. On page 78 out of 80, we're rocking and rolling. So this is the data security.
Gosh.
Very important and stuff. You know, talks about FERPA and how we're being secure with personally identifiable information. That's important stuff now. I didn't see anything particularly weird about it.
Yeah, I don't either. And just if you guys have, maybe Adam, just take a look at this one and make sure that that's all covered. And then if there's a change or something that's needed, we could discuss at the next meeting. But otherwise, I'm okay with.
Sure, we can do that. We can do that.
Yeah, I think that's fair to have Adam take a quick look at it. It goes right into the very last section because it talks about third-party people and how they interact with some of that data and whatnot. And so I think that's all kind of goes together.
We can have him look at that one too.
Yep, we can do the same there.
And that's the last one.
All right. So 800s. No. I think we will call it for the day and say that we did our 700s, which is, I think, a good job on our part. In lieu of, our fearless leader, Ruthina, being here, I don't know if we want to set our next date. I know last time we filled in some doodle polls on when a lot of us would be available. This was just the first time, so I don't know if that poll still has some potential future dates that we can come back with, or if we need to send out another poll, but I don't know that we should set the date now.
Yeah, I don't think we need to set the date. I think in the past what we just had done, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, is we say we want to do the 800s next time, but we're really down to like 2 or 3 sets left, right?
I think 800, 500, and 600. 500 and 600 are large.
And 800 is really not that bad.
It's pretty small, yeah.
Yeah, and this is pretty straightforward.
So maybe we throw 8 and then pick either 5 or 6 to also throw on the agenda, whichever one. I don't know what they are and who would need to be there, but maybe subject to availability of those folks to add that on there. If we think we would roll through the 800s and get the next one, or do we want to just have the 800s on there and know that we're going to have a fairly short meeting? I know we want to get them done, so.
Yeah, I mean, 500s are student personnel. And Kim, you'll have to tell me what the other one is that we're missing.
Instructional programs, right, or something like that?
Yeah, 600 is educational programs, right, Chase?
I would add the 500s on there. They're not super long, but just do because that's pretty much the people that we would need would be the people that are minus fake Chase Ramey over here. The people we need, right, that are in this meeting now.
You just as well roll into the next one if they
might as well just keep going.
Keep going that night. So whenever you decide to do it.
Yeah.
So 800s and 500s.
And maybe Chase, you could just we can have Dwayne on here, but if he knows they're coming up, he can just look through those 800s or him and Jeff or whoever, and just make any notes that are needed on there.
All right.
I was shaking my head. Yes, we'll do that. I've got some extra noise in the background, so I was muted.
All right, so I think we're good. I guess I have to entertain a motion from Paul to adjourn.
I don't make those motions.
How
But I
about a
will move that
motion
we-
like this?
I move we adjourn.
I will second that. Do I need to say, are we all in favor, me and you?
Aye.
I say aye. So we are officially adjourned. You guys can go have some dinner or something.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Bye,
Chase,
guys.